Hi and welcome to the 5th episode of a new series where we'll be using the new Unity 5 to create a simple game. In this episode we will be learning about transitioning between animations. So to do that, first we have to create a second animation, and then we'll learn about animation parameters, which will help us connect the animations. So let's create our second animation first. Okay, to do so, import the animation sprites that you need into the game directory, into the sprites folder. Okay, if you want to use the same sprites that we are using in this episode, the link is in the description box below, so you can download them from the link. Okay, so let's go back to Unity. Okay, and change the settings on the newly imported images or sprites. Okay, make sure you uncheck generate bitmaps. Change filter mode to point, since we are using pixel art. Okay, and apply the changes. Okay, so let's create our new animation by going to the animation tab. Okay, make sure you have the player game object selected, and let's create a new animation, which is the attacking animation. So let's call it player attacking. Okay, as with the flying animation, which we have created in the previous episode, okay, we'll use the frames for the attacking animation and drag them to the animation timeline to create our attacking animation. Okay, so we make sure that we drag the necessary sprites to the timeline. Okay, from 0, 1, 2, and 1, 0. Okay, so the attacking animation plays like this. Okay, but for the attacking animation, we'll make it play faster, since it only happens in an instant. Okay, now that we have created our second animation, okay, let's move on to animation parameters. Okay, so think of animation parameters like conditions. So for example, if you want to buy a cup of coffee, you might need $5 to buy it. So you could also say that if you have $5, then you can buy a cup of coffee. So if you have $5 is the condition. Okay, so how do we relate to that back in Unity? So let's go back to Unity 5 and select the player game object, select the Animator tab, and under parameters, click on this plus sign and select Boolean, which is either true or false. Okay, so and make sure you type in if attacking, which I've already created just now. Okay, so this is the condition, or rather the animation parameter which we have just created, and we'll use this to connect both of these animations. Okay, so notice that now there are two animations here in the Animator tab. Okay, so let's move on to connecting our animations. Okay, so to connect the flying animation to the attacking animation, okay, right click. First select the player flying animation and right click on it and select make transition. Okay, left click on the player attacking animation and select this connection. Okay, make sure you set has exit time to be false by unchecking it. And under settings, make sure you set the transition duration as 0. Okay, this is the amount of time it takes to change from one animation to another. So in other situations, you might need it to be more than 0, but in our case, we want it to change immediately. Okay, and scroll down under the conditions area, click the plus sign here. And so if attacking is true, the flying animation will change to the playing the attacking animation. And now select the player attacking animation, right click and select make transition. Okay, now we are going to connect the attacking animation back to the flying animation. And now select the connection. Okay, make sure you also uncheck the has exit time. Okay, set the transition duration to 0. Okay, make sure you add the condition that if attacking is false. Okay, so these two connections allow you to change from the flying animation to the attacking animation and vice versa. Okay, so how do we actually make the change happen? So to do that, we need to create a new script for the player game object. So go to the scripts folder, right click in the empty area, and create a new C# script and call it player. Okay, now select the player game object and choose add component. Okay, type in player and press enter to add the player script as a component to the player game object. Okay, now go to mono-develop. Or rather, you can just double click on the player and it will open up the player script. Okay, so we need to get the animator component of the player in order to make the change happen. So we create an animator here, and in the start method, we retrieve the animator using get component animator. Okay, so this line gets you the animator, and in the update method, which is called once per frame, we check if you have pressed the attack key, which you can set to be anything, but in this case, we'll just use the X key. So if input.get key down, okay, key code.x. Okay, so this checks if the X key was pressed. Okay, and we will set the boolean, which is the animation parameter which we have just created. Okay, the if attacking parameter as true. Okay, now there's one more thing that we need to do, and that is we need to create a delay method, or rather an enumerator method, which you can use to create a method that is called after a few seconds. So you can use this type of methods to schedule something to happen, maybe after a few seconds, maybe 1 or 2 seconds, depending on your preference or what you need. Okay, so in this method, we'll make sure that we set if attacking to false, so that it changes back to the flying animation. So now to call this method, okay, just use start coroutine and type in the name of the method and specify the amount of time you want it to wait before going on to the next line, which is this. So in our case, we'll use maybe 0.75. And now let's go back to the Unity 5 game editor. Okay, now when we start the game, okay, the flying animation starts by default, but notice what happens when we press the X key. Okay, for an instant, okay, the attacking animation was played. Okay, notice that our character becomes quite serious when he is in attacking mode. Okay, so I hope that you have enjoyed today's episode. In the next episode, we'll be learning about how to move your character so that you can control it to move up, down, left or right. I hope to see you in the next episode. Okay, by importing the sprites for our first character. Okay, so let's go back to the Unity 5